Jasim Ahmad from Institute of Advanced Studies in Education, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Today, we will discuss on a module related to the awareness about Environmental Protection Acts for teacher educators. The topic also includes flora and fauna conservational attempts and national and international agencies involved in this work. Dear learners, first of all, let us see the objectives of this module, which are: number 1, to provide an overview of environmental protection acts from the Indian Constitution; number 2, to discuss various attempts to conserve flora and fauna; and number 3, to elaborate about some of the national and international agencies working for environmental issues. Due to ever increasing pressure of overconsumption, population growth and technology, the biophysical environment is being degraded. Sometimes it is permanently lost. This has been recognized at national as well as international levels by the government and the agencies involved in the task of looking into the affairs of environment. After recognizing the issues, the government began placing restraints on activities that cause environmental degradation. Since the year 1960, the environmental movements have created more awareness of the various environmental problems. Environmental protection is the practice of protecting the natural environment by individuals, organizations and government. The main objectives of environmental protection are: number 1, to conserve natural resources; number 2, to conserve existing natural environment; and number 3, to repair damage if possible and reverse the trends. You may be aware that Article 48 of the Constitution of India specifies that the state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of this country. And Article 51A states that it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. Article 253 of the Indian Constitution relates to the protection and improvement of the human environment and the prevention of hazards to human beings, other living creatures, plants and property. Despite the various environmental issues faced by India, the country still has a rich and varied wildlife compared to Europe. Large and charismatic mammals are important for wildlife tourism in India, and several national parks and wildlife sanctuaries cater to these needs. Project Tiger, started in 1972, is a major effort to conserve the tiger and its habitats. At the turn of the 20th century, one estimate of the tiger population in India placed the figure at 40,000. Yet an Indian tiger census conducted in 2008 revealed the existence of only 1,411 tigers. 2010 tiger census revealed that there are 1,700 tigers left in India. As per the latest tiger census 2015, there are around 2,226 tigers in India. Having perceived the need of protection of environment, its flora and fauna, the government of India, in the light of these articles, enacted laws to protect them. Some of the important laws related to environmental protection and wildlife are: number 1, the Environment Protection Act 1986; number 2, the Forest Conservation Act 1980; number 3, the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972; number 4, Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974; number 5, Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981; and the last one, the Indian Forest Act 1927. Let us discuss about them in brief and start with the most recent. Environment Protection Act 1986 is an act of the Parliament of India. In the wake of the Bhopal gas tragedy, the Government of India enacted the Environmental Protection Act of 1986 under the Article 253 of our Constitution. It was passed in March 1986 and came into force on 19th November 1986. The main purpose of the Act is to implement the decision of the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment. They relate to the protection and improvement of the human environment and the prevention of hazards to human beings, other living creatures, plants and property. The Act is an umbrella legislation designed to provide a framework for central government coordination of the activities of various central and state authorities established under previous laws such as the Water Act and the Air Act. The Forest Conservation Act 1980 is an act of the Parliament of India to provide for the conservation of forest and for matters connected therewith or ancillary or incidental thereto. It was further amended in 1988. This law extends to the whole of India except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It was enacted by Parliament of India to control further deforestation of forest areas in India. The Act came into force on 25th October 1980. It has 5 sections. The Forest Conservation Act 1980 was enacted to help conserve the country's forest. It restricts and regulates the de-reservation of forest or use of forest land for non-forest purposes without the prior approval of central government. To this end, the Act lays down the prerequisites for the conversion of forest land for non-forest purposes. The Wildlife Protection Act 1972 is an act of the Parliament of India enacted for protection of plants and animal species. Before 1972, India had only 5 designated national parks. Among other reforms, the Act established schedules of protected plant and animal species. Hunting or harvesting these species was largely outlawed. The Act provides for the protection of wild animals, birds and plants and for matters connected therewith or ancillary or incidental thereto. It extends to the whole of India except the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which has its own wildlife acts. It has 6 schedules which give varying degrees of protection. Schedule 1 and Part 2 of Schedule 2 provide absolute protection. Offences under these are prescribed the highest penalties. A species listed in Schedule 3 and Schedule 4 is also protected, but the penalties are much lower. Schedule 5 includes the animals which may be hunted. The specified endemic plants in Schedule 6 are prohibited from cultivation and planting. The hunting to the enforcement authorities have the power to compound offences under this schedule, that is, they impose fines on the offenders. Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. It was enacted in 1974 to provide for the prevention and control of water pollution and for the maintaining or restoring of wholesomeness of water in the country. The Act was amended in 1988 to make it more effective. The Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981 is an act of the Parliament of India to control and prevent air pollution in India. It was amended in 1987. It provides for the prevention and control of air pollution and maintaining the good quality of air. It has also provided for the establishment of the central and state boards for the prevention and control of air pollution under section 3 and 4. According to this act, air pollution means the presence in the atmosphere of any air pollutant. An air pollutant means any solid, liquid or gaseous substance present in the atmosphere in such a concentration as may be or tend to be injurious to human being or other living creatures or plant or property or environment. The Indian Forest Act of 1927, which was largely based on previous Indian Forest Act implemented during the British rule. The most famous one was the Indian Forest Act of 1878. Both the 1878 Act and the 1927 Act sought to consolidate and reserve the areas having forest cover or significant wildlife to regulate movement and transit of forest produce and duty leviable on timber and other forest produce. It also defines the procedure to be followed for declaring an area to be a reserved forest, a protected forest or a village forest. It also defines the forest offence and explains what are the acts prohibited inside a reserved forest and penalties leviable on violation of the provisions of the Act. Dear learners, let us discuss about some important national and international agencies and organizations involved in conservation of environment as well as animal species or fauna and plant species or flora. Number 1, International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, IUCN. IUCN was established in the year 1948. It was previously called the International Union for the Protection of Nature from 1948 to 1956. The International Union for Conservation of Nature is an international organization working in the field of nature conservation and sustainable use of natural resources. It is involved in data gathering and analysis, research, field projects, advocacy and education. IUCN's mission is to influence, encourage and assist societies throughout the world to conserve nature and to ensure that any use of natural resources is equitable and ecologically sustainable. IUCN has a membership of over 1,400 governmental and non-governmental organizations. Some 16,000 scientists and experts participate in the work of IUCN commissions on a voluntary basis. It employs approximately 1,000 full-time staff in more than 50 countries. Its headquarters is at Gland, Switzerland. The IUCN Red List of Threatened Species, also known as the IUCN Red List or Red Data List, founded in 1965, has evolved to become the world's most comprehensive inventory of the global conservation status of biological species. It uses a set of criteria to evaluate the extinction risk of thousands of species and subspecies. These criteria are relevant to all species and all regions of the world. With its strong scientific base, the IUCN Red List is recognized as the most authoritative guide to the status of biological diversity. A series of regional red lists are produced by countries or organizations which assesses the risk of extinction to a species within a political management unit. The aim is to convey the urgency of conservation issues to the public and policy makers, as well as help the international community to try to reduce a species extinction. Number 2, the World Wildlife Fund, WWF. World Wildlife Fund for Nature is an international non-governmental organization working on the issues regarding the conservation, research and restoration of the environment. It was formerly named as the World Wildlife Fund, which remains its official name in Canada and the United States. It is the world's largest independent conservation organization with over 5 million supporters worldwide, working in more than 90 countries, supporting around 1,300 conservation and environmental projects around the world. It is a charity with approximately 60% of its funding coming from voluntary donations by private individuals. 45% of the fund's income comes from the Netherlands, the United Kingdom and the United States. Number 3, the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC. The Natural Resources Defense Council is an environmental action organization consisting of over 300 lawyers, scientists and other professionals that commands a membership of about 1.3 million people worldwide. The NRDC makes use of local laws, scientific research and its wide network of members and activists to protect wildlife and habitats around the globe. Some of the issues the NRDC focuses on are curbing global warming, encouraging clean energy, preserving wild lands and wetlands, restoring ocean habitats, stopping the spread of toxic chemicals and working towards greener living in China. Number 4, the Wildlife Conservation Society, WCS. It supports zoos and aquariums and also promotes environmental education and conservation of wild populations and habitats. Its efforts are focused on a select group of animals including bears, big cats, elephants, great apes, hoofed mammals, cetaceans and carnivores. The WCS was established in 1895 as the New York Zoological Society when its mission was, and still it is, to promote wildlife protection, foster the study of zoology and create a top-notch zoo. Today, there are 5 wildlife conservation zoos in the state of New York alone: the Bronx Zoo, the Central Park Zoo, the Queens Zoo, the Prospect Park Zoo and the New York Aquarium at Coney Island. Dear learners, now come to the 5th agency, Center for Science and Environment, CSE. Center for Science and Environment is a not-for-profit public interest research and advocacy organization based in New Delhi, India, that promotes environmentally sound and equitable development strategies. Established in 1980, CSE works as a think tank on environment development issues in India. Poor planning, climate shifts, devastating India's Sundarbans and advocates for policy changes and better implementation of the already existing policies. CSE uses knowledge based activism to create awareness about problems and propose sustainable solutions. 6th agency is the Nature Conservancy. The Nature Conservancy works with communities, businesses and individuals to protect over 100 million acres of land around the globe. The goal of this organization is to preserve entire wildlife communities along with their rich species diversity, a holistic approach that is vital to the health of our planet. One of the Nature Conservancy's more innovative conservation approach is debt for nature swaps, which maintain the biodiversity of developing countries in exchange for forgiveness of their debts. These debt for nature initiatives have been successful in such wildlife rich countries as Panama, Peru and Guatemala. Number 7, the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club is a grassroots organization that works to protect ecological communities, encourage smart energy solutions and create an enduring legacy for America's wilderness. It was founded by naturalist John Muir in 1892. Its current initiatives include developing alternatives to fossil fuels, limiting greenhouse emissions and protecting wildlife communities. It is also involved in issues like environmental justice, clean air and water, global population growth, toxic waste and responsible trade. The Sierra Club supports vibrant chapters across the US that encourages members to become involved in local conservation work. The next agency is Oceana. It is the largest non-profit organization devoted exclusively to the world's oceans. Oceana works to shield fish, marine mammals and other aquatic lives from the deleterious effects of pollution and industrial fishing. This organization has launched a responsible fishing campaign aimed at preventing overfishing as well as individual initiative to protect sharks and sea turtles, and it closely monitors the effects of the deep water horizon oil spill on coastal habitats in the Gulf of Mexico. Unlike some other wildlife groups, Oceana focuses only on select handful of campaigns at only given time, better enabling it to achieve a specific and measurable outcomes. Dear learners, let us come to the ninth agency, that is Conservation International. With its broad team of scientists and policy experts, Conservation International aims to help stabilize the global climate, protect the world's supplies of fresh water, and ensure overall human well-being in ecologically threatened areas, largely by working with indigenous peoples and various non-governmental organizations. One of these organizations' most impressive calling cards is Biodiversity Hotspots Project. Through this project, it identifies and protects the ecosystems on our planet that exhibit both the richest diversity of plant and animal life and the greatest susceptibility to human encroachment and destruction. The 10th agency is the National Audubon Society, NAS. With its 500 chapters across the US and over 2,500 important bird areas, the National Audubon Society is one of America's premier organizations devoted to bird and wildlife conservation. Important bird areas are those places where birds are especially threatened by human encroachment, ranging from New York's Jamaica Bay to Alaska's Arctic slope. The NAS enlists citizen scientists in its annual bird surveys, including the Christmas bird count and the coastal bird survey, and encourages its members to lobby for effective conservation plans and policies. This organization's monthly publication, titled as Audubon Magazine, may be used as a great way to encourage your students at colleges and schools to develop environmental consciousness. Now come to the next agency, the Jane Goodall Institute, JGI. The chimpanzees of Africa share 99% of their genome with human beings, which is why their brutal treatment at the hands of civilization is a cause for shame. The Jane Goodall Institute, founded by the famous naturalist, works to protect chimpanzees, great apes and other primates in Africa and elsewhere by funding sanctuaries, fighting illegal trafficking and educating the public. The JGI also encourages efforts to provide health care and free education for girls in African villages and promotes sustainable livelihoods in rural and backwards areas via investment and community managed microcredit programs. The next agency is the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, RSPB. A bit like the British version of the National Audubon Society, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds was founded in 1889 to oppose the use of exotic feathers in the fashion industry. The RSPB's aims were straightforward: to end the mindless destruction of birds, to promote the protection of birds, and to discourage people from wearing the feathers of birds. Today, RSPB protects and restores habitats for birds and other wildlife, conducts recovery projects, researches on problems facing bird populations, and manages 200 nature reserves. Each year, the organization posts its Big Garden Bird Watch, a way for members to participate in a nationwide bird count. To summarize, dear learners, Today, we have discussed about the important environmental protection acts of India. We have also discussed some very important and very active national and international agencies and organizations involved in the conservation and protection of environment and its flora and fauna. Side by side, we have also tried to see which organizations are engaged in the protection of which organisms. Dear learners, we all should also behave and act as responsible and sensible global citizens and should contribute in the protection of environment and its various species of flora and fauna in our own individual capacity. As we know, charity begins at home. We must do our bit towards a better and healthy world. Thank you so much for today's